Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to make a start now, if that's okay. I know there's people coming online, and this is a little slow, but we probably need to kick off. So, welcome to the latest in our monthly virtual meetings of the Coventry Warwickshire Champions. Today, we have in excess of 130 business people from across Coventry and Warwickshire joining us. So, thank you to each and every one of you for giving up your time this afternoon. Obviously, a key part of the Champions network is just that, the opportunity to network. Sadly, physically, that's beyond us at the moment. Fingers crossed for 2021. And hopefully, we look ahead to in a few months actually meeting together. My name is Adam Dent of Advent Communications. We're a PR firm based in Coventry and working, when conditions allow, across the UK and abroad. Even in these strange times, Champions events are designed to keep you informed of what's happening across our patch in Coventry and Warwickshire, and hear from those who hail from or have strong connections to our area. We have some first timers today on the call, so thank you for joining. Please do contact Nick Erskine, who runs the Champion scheme. His details are online, and if you'd like to become a permanent member of our network and a part of these meetings, that would be great. Nick is on this session, so please do connect with him afterwards. Our hashtag today is ChampSep, so please do tweet away. Today we're going to hear from three people, all with very interesting stories to tell, good and not so good at the moment. Our first speaker is Joanna Reid, who's the Executive Director of the Belgrade Theatre and known to most of you, I'm sure. We're then going to hear from Martin Sutherland of Coventry's UK City of Culture, and finally from Phil Popham, the CEO of legendary UK sports car firm Lotus, which has established a new base here, or is establishing a new base here in Warwickshire. All sectors, it's fair to say, have been affected by COVID, but entertainment venues have probably been hit harder than most. And bleakly, at the moment, after last week's news, there's very little signs of a return. The Belgrade Theatre has been at the centre of city life since it opened in 1958, and in terms of culture, community, and as a draw to bring people into the city centre. Any arts organisation, and I'm sure there'll be a wry smile here from Joanna, has its ups and downs during its history. And the Belgrade has weathered those waters very, very successfully over the years. But at the moment, the lights are out, the doors are locked, and the stage curtains are very much drawn. It's a hard time for staff and management at the organisation. So we're very grateful to Joanna, a long-time champion, for joining us today. Joanna, thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
No, my pleasure. We've asked a few people this, because most people do sort of remember it's a JFK moment, I suppose. Can you remember when you first realised that COVID was probably going to be a threat here to us in the UK and also to the Belgrade?
I think it first became a reality in the week of the 9th of March, which is when we had the show once on. The previous week, one of my staff had come back from holiday in the Far East and was talking about all the masks being worn in Beijing and wherever she was, Bangkok rather. But, you know, at that point, obviously we didn't think it was going to get any closer, but the week of the 9th of March, Scotland began doing things like reducing capacity for theatres. So by the end of that week, we were already having conversations about what would happen if we were told we could only have 500 people in. Our main theatre seats 850, so we had a practical issue about who do we say they can't come in. But the real unbelievable moment was Monday, the 16th of March, at 6 o'clock, when the government advised people not to go to the theatre. And at that point, it was advice, not lockdown. So absolute chaos ensued. We had a show on that night in our smaller space, B2. Audience is very confused. And we also had the big show, Blood Brothers, getting in, what's called getting in for the main stage. So there were technicians working on stage. So, and when the government said that, and the immediate response of people was confusion, understandable. But then the lockdown was when I realised this is really, really serious for theatre, because in Shakespeare's day, they closed theatres for plague and they were closed for 2 years. So immediately I thought, this is a long haul. This is going to be very, very serious for us.
And what, give us a sort of picture, if you can. Obviously we're joined by business people mostly. As an entity, give us a sort of sum up of how many staff you have, how you source your funding, etc.
Hmm. So, and the Belgrade Theatre is a producing theatre, which means we make some of our shows, and we also present shows that have come in, that we brought in on who are called visiting companies. They're on tours. We have 2 auditoria. The main theatre seats 850, and the second auditoria, which we call B2, which we opened in 2008, is flexible. It seats about 250. And we have a very big participation, education and talent development program that is all about engagement with members of the community. So we've grown the business since reopening with our B2 space. We've grown the business to a 6.3 million turnover. Of that, we now earn 75% of that, whereas in 2008, we only earned 40% of that. So it's been a big, very big necessary turnaround of a reduction of reliance on grants. And up until COVID, that was a massive success story. Though obviously now, like other businesses, it means that we lost 75% of our income overnight.
And does that does that now count against you in a ironic way, that you've weaned yourself off that grant support?
Yes, it does, in that our grants, which are the biggest grant, comes from the Arts Council, and that is about £1 million, and Coventry City Council, who funded us right from the beginning on opening, which was a huge thing for any council to do. And Coventry City Council was right out there insisting that culture was really key for its vision for the rebuilt Coventry. So those two together, it's about £1.5 million. And that doesn't cover core wages or overheads. Now, I know that obviously for businesses, we have a luxury in that we have any grant funding at all. But if this had happened in 2008, we wouldn't be in such a critical position as we are now, because we earn so much of our income. It has to put a juddering halt on everything that we do, because we just don't have the money to go forward. So yes, it's ironic that those of arts organisations who are most successful in becoming more commercial are actually now hardest hit by the current crisis.
And compared to other regional theatres, how many of them have that sort of model where the majority of their income is self-generated?
I would say the theatres of our sort of size, so over 800, most of them are earning 60 or 70%. The RSC is an exception. They earn 90%, so you can imagine what kind of problems they must be facing. Smaller theatres tend to be nearer 50, 60%. So it is actually kind of, and obviously those of us who are bigger can earn more because we have more seats to sell, and that's why it's happened that way around. I mean, from the Belgrade's point of view, we've also developed a lot of other income streams. So in our 6.3 million turnover, 42% of that is from box office, and 24.5% is from funding. But otherwise, we also earn through catering, events and conferencing, and we have commercialised our set building so that we build sets for other theatre companies around the country. And then 3% is donations and sponsorship. So that's a kind of makeup of where our income comes from.
And what about staff members? Are a large proportion sort of freelancers or contractors? How does that break down?
Yes, they are, in that it's quite a complicated picture. We have 60 permanent, well, we had 60 permanent staff. We have a big pool of casuals who work for performances such as ushers. Also, a lot of our catering staff are not permanent. And some of the technical staff are not permanent. And then we also bring in freelancers for our set building. And also all the actors, the musicians, the stage management, the directors, writers, choreographer, lighting designer, sound designers, they're all freelance. And last year we worked with 40 freelancers like that, and we had 21,000 hours of skilled craftspeople making and building sets for our BPS, our set construction company.
I'm sorry, without being too gratuitous, I take it just everything ground to a halt that day then? Literally.
Yes, it did. I mean, my most immediate problem was that we had shows on, and also because they were not our shows, we had contracts with each company coming in. So it was not a question, it was not particularly because of the way the government approached it, it was not a question of Belgrade being able to say to Blood Brothers, sorry, you can't perform. We had a contract with them, and we had to make sure that we undid the contract by mutual agreement. So the most immediate problem was we had all these shows that were on sale right up until July. Every single show had to be individually contacted and unpicked, but particularly the Blood Brothers. I remember the conversations were going on to 11 o'clock on that Monday night when I said the get-in will continue, we will be ready to put the show on tomorrow evening, but I have to tell you, I don't think you'll have an audience, and I wonder if you're going to have a bad PR outcome. So we had to come to an agreement. In the end, they did agree that we should decide we weren't going to proceed. But it was close one.
Even I felt quite threatened then, Joanna. I think I'd have pulled the plug at that. Okay, and I mean, I take it for the touring company that does Blood Brothers, that situation is replicated at every theatre in the country. Were you early in their tour, or?
I'm not sure. Blood Brothers, as you can imagine, is a show that's has been running for really many years. Their tours, these big tours, they tend to be out on tour for at least 10 or 12 weeks. And then have a little gap and then go back out on tour. So yes, for them, a complete nightmare. I mean, at least the national lockdown was very clear. Everything had to stop. What is extremely difficult, and I will talk about that a bit later, is the current situation where there could be where there are local lockdowns. Because for a touring company, that is a real nightmare. Cool. So yes, each of those visiting companies, they're in the middle of a tour of differing lengths, and suddenly they weren't going to have any income, and yet they had people under contract, and so they had their own problems as well.
Yeah, and what sort of the government measures from a business point of view have you made use of? Well,
we were, like everybody, we were able to jump onto furlough very quickly, and that, I have to say, has been a complete lifesaver for the Belgrade. It just so happens that as an organisation, we lose most of the money between March and October, and we make our money between October and March. So actually for furlough to step in and cover the wages of staff was an immediate help, and it bought us time, but at the same time, so in the early days of lockdown, at the same time of having to cancel on a show-by-show basis each contract, we were also supposed to go on sale on the 1st of April for our autumn season, so from September through to January. Panto 2020 was already on sale. We delayed our 1st of April on sale by a couple of weeks because we just decided, let's be positive, we're going to be open in the autumn. So we had to make a decision about that. That took negotiations with all the individual companies. We had our own shows. We had to decide about our own shows anyway. So there was all of that rushing around, but we knew that we wouldn't be delivering performances, so we could put people onto furlough. And then when furlough became flexible, again, that was extremely helpful because we were able, as soon as we were allowed, we started takeaway catering, so that brought some staff back, and we've had catering in our foyers since 4th of July, whenever that was allowed, so that brought some staff back in. So the flexibility has been enormously helpful, but even so, we have had to go into redundancy consultations, and we have had to make some posts redundant.
And it's, you know, we're all facing travails of various sorts. I take it, you know, it's a horrible process to go through, clearly, because you're affecting people's lives. When I say people have been accepting of it, there is some sort of feeling that they understand why it's not been bad management, it's not been an individual recession in the arts. So there is a feeling of, I don't want to use a political slogan, but people do understand that everybody is in it together, don't they? Has that been reflected in your dealings with them?
Yes, very much. I mean, the staff have been amazing, and the professionalism throughout are very difficult. Obviously, it's difficult because, as I say, the consultation is very difficult for the individuals. And we had an 8-week consultation process. And the staff but we've also, all our casuals, we simply haven't offered any work. We were able to keep them on furlough for a bit, but we've just had to stop that as well, because when it began costing us more, we had to stop that. And then staff who are currently working are on shorter hours now. But yes, staff have been amazing because everyone's in it together. And we can't, we can't quite believe it still, because who'd have thought it? As I said earlier, it was a medieval thing for the theatre to have to close because of plague. And whoever believed that was going to happen in this day and age?
I know, and the uncertainty, we at giving too much away about our setup here, we have a sort of storeroom. So at the moment, when we've occasionally had a client in, we nip in there to change and be smart. And there is all the papers lying there from March the 20th, and the top of the Daily Mail is the Prime Minister saying we'll have this licked in 12 weeks. When you see it now, it is it's sort of difficult to take. Explain to people the financial importance of the pantomime to the Belgrade.
Yeah, so Panto, and this will be the same for all arts organisations or probably even live performance venues throughout the country, because of the tradition in this country for celebrating Christmas that usually involves going out for a show. Panto, in fact, underpins something like 90% of the box office for the Belgrade shows. So, I mean, out of our box office earnings of last year of over, I can't remember the figure, but something like 2.5 million, a lot of that we share with the visiting companies who come in. That's part of the deal. But the Belgrade performances, the Belgrade shows will earn about 650,000 net of VAT, and a good 600 of that comes from Panto. So Panto is the one show that actually makes money, and therefore can subsidise other work, such as our community and participation and engagement work. And also our visiting company programme actually overall will make a contribution, a net contribution of what we get to keep rather than giving to the visiting company, of about 250,000. And it's the kind of mixed economy of all these different sources of income that comes in to support the work that we are funded to do, which is our community participation, the work that we make for the city of Coventry that is unique to this area, and bringing a lively and wide-ranging programme of work that's going to appeal to lots of different audiences. And so yeah, so the thing of Panto, it is absolutely huge. And in fact, we had to make the decision about Panto in April because we have to commit so much money to it, and it does do very well. It regularly sells 90%, but if it didn't sell 90%, we simply couldn't afford to put it on, because actually how much money we put into it means that we could go bankrupt. So we very early on could see that actually Panto was going to be a major, major problem for us, and we had to gauge where we thought public health and public confidence would be, and then put in motion all the plans to decide how we're going to manage it.
And it's very difficult for anybody to predict what's going to happen. How do you plan on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and how do you see the short first and then the medium term panning out?
My particular position as executive director is the long-term planning. So I'm always looking 6 to 9 months ahead, and in fact, because we've been able to apply for emergency funding from the Arts Council, people may remember there were 2 tranches of emergency funding. One lot came out in June, and the other lot we applied for in August. The emergency funding is very much designed to stop arts organisations from going bankrupt. And we couldn't apply to the June one because we wouldn't have gone bankrupt by June. But we have applied for this because we are in severe, we do need funding to keep us going until the end of March. So I feel because of City of Culture and because of the work that Belgrade's done, I am not complacent, but we are confident that we'll get some funding. So we've got a breathing space up until the end of March. And the next big challenge that I have to look at is what I think is going to be happening from the 1st of April, and therefore particularly what's going to happen to our 75% earned income, which makes next financial year balance, which, I mean, you don't have to be an economist to know we're not going to get the same levels of income back immediately. There's going to be growth. It's going to take time. So I'm looking very much at the longer term, but we're very aware of, you know, we had shows on sale up to July. We've only just announced the fact that clearly the November shows can't go ahead and that we've had to postpone Panto. We do still have a few shows in January that were already contracted. and we're playing for time as much as possible so that we can make decisions about whether or not we think performances are going to go ahead as late as possible. And we've got the January ones confirmed and contracted, but we're now looking at when do we really think we're going to have a season. And we certainly think from 1st of April we're going to have a season, but the question is, what about March, what about February? We're waiting on government instruction about social distancing, because for theatre, the social distancing simply is not economically viable for the normal big shows, even putting aside whether or not then audiences are going to come back in the numbers. Even if the government says it's all right, our audience is going to come back in the numbers that we need them to come back in. So it's a real kind of mix of some of the team looking very much at the communications with the public, what has been on sale, when do we need to let people know that actually we've agreed with the visiting company that that particular show can't go ahead. We did an awful lot of rescheduling, so shows that had been due to perform April through this year have all been rescheduled to next year. So a lot of those shows, in fact, will happen next year.
So is it the same panto next year that would have been this year?
It is, yes. And in fact, we're expecting to build some of it this year because we've still got some of our set building team. But yes, it's Beauty and the Beast, which was going to be this year and is now going to be 2021.
And just lastly, before we wrap up, and I hope you don't think I'm being impudent asking, how, as the person with their hand on the tiller, how do you cope personally? How have you found it as a business leader?
It is, I have found it extremely difficult. I mean, my job, like a lot of people listening, is all about delivery and operational delivery and giving people, the staff, concrete plans to allow people to get on with their work. So the biggest difficulty has been the firefighting, the necessary firefighting. And also, I think because theatre is very much about, it's a collaborative effort, every element is a collaborative effort. And also our whole business relies on mass gatherings, whether it's getting into a rehearsal room to make the show, having audiences coming in, all our catering, conferencing, building sets for other people, all of that relies on mass gatherings. And I find it very concerning that the current media message is effectively, it is dangerous to be in a group larger than 6. So from a point of view of rebuilding public confidence that actually coming into a theatre, a COVID-safe theatre like ours, is a safe activity. It's a very big job to do when there's so much mixed messaging coming out in the media from the government. And it has been extremely, extremely difficult, very, very stressful for people, because we're not, I mean, I know it's been extremely stressful for everybody, but theatre, from the outside, it looks like we're, quotes, just entertainment, but we honestly believe we are a community resource, and also that what we can offer is good for mental health, it's good for community cohesion, it's good for aspirations for young people. So the fact that all of that work is severely threatened is very stressful, and on a personal level, you know, I've spent 35 years building up organizations. I never expected to have to oversee this kind of catastrophe. I absolutely believe theatre as an art form is fine, it will survive, and I absolutely believe the Belgrade as an institution is going to survive. The real worry is the interim, the 3-4 years, and the loss of skills, and that side of it.
Well, if this might be scant consolation at the moment, but you'll see from the chat box from Jenny and David, you're certainly going to have a flood of people coming back in, I think, showing support, because I think everybody realised what an asset it is, and you wouldn't want to pay this cost, but it's times like this maybe that underlines to people that So look, thank you very much for joining us. Do stay on if you wish to. You probably got to hear Martin. No, but do stay on, and thank you very much. And I'm sure if anything that happens, that when you do reopen, the business community will be thoroughly behind you, Joanna. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. Obviously, the Belgrade is one of the central pillars of the City of Culture. And in fact, many people, I think, were on this call who are on this call, I beg your pardon, were at the Belgrade on the evening that it was announced that we'd been successful. It was a full house that night, and I don't think anybody will forget it. Martin Sutherland, our next guest, joined the City of Culture Trust as Chief Executive in the following months. Martin has been a Champions guest before, but since he last appeared at Fargo, a lot of water has flowed under the bridge since then. So we've decided to bring him back and get the latest picture. Good afternoon, Martin.
Good afternoon, Adam. Thanks for having me back.
No, our pleasure. Obviously, we've heard from Joanna and the impact on the Belgrade. As someone who's worked generally across the country in theatre and is now plugged in at a national level, give us your assessment really of where you see the cultural sector and how it's coping. And certainly one of the people on the chat had said, you know, you as City of Culture Trust and also the Belgrade and the industry in general employs a lot of freelancers. Will they be there once things are recommissioned and up and opening again?
I mean, it's there's no doubt it's been catastrophic, and I guess it's been catastrophic for organisations and indeed the individuals, freelancers you talk about, and indeed it's been, you know, a challenging time for audiences. So I guess Joanna's, you know, absolutely encapsulated brilliantly what is happening to theatres, museums, galleries up and down the country, and the challenges they have of opening anytime soon are absolutely real. For us as City of Culture Trust, I guess where our real focus has been is around what is the impact on that freelance network. The theatre industry particularly relies on a dedicated, talented, continually upskilling freelance work. And when lockdown happened, all of their work dried up overnight. But also, they were not eligible for support from government. They weren't employed by an organisation who could furlough them. And of course, you know, it was catastrophic. And that situation remains the same. I mean, there's so little production that is going to be happening anytime soon outside of City of Culture that will provide these opportunities for freelancers up and down the country. And the situation in Coventry and Warwickshire remains the same. So for independents and freelancers, it's been really punishing. I guess the other thing I want to reflect on briefly is though the impact on audiences as well, because, you know, when lockdown happened, there was this kind of lurch online and people were, I guess, consoling themselves or creating connections through consumption of free cultural activity. And so in a way that kind of perhaps points to what the future needs to be in terms of how do we kind of ensure that we can keep connections digitally with our audiences, but also it gives us an indication that there is an appetite to engage in cultural activity and that perhaps the nation finally woke up to the value that arts and culture plays in people's everyday lives. So audiences have shifted. Our challenge is now to get those audiences back feeling safe in spaces when buildings can be reopened. And for the City of Culture, it's about how do we get people back into public spaces as well as buildings to try and provide that kind of financial fuel that those organisations so badly need. So it's really grim. There have been some good initiatives. Furlough's great. Very worrying what will happen at the end of October for businesses who rely on furlough within the culture and creative industries. Mass unemployment expected within our sector because nobody's coming back into buildings anytime soon. So, you know, the government have got much more to do, and we need to continue to pushing for kind of sector-specific support to help this sector recover.
I mean, a crumb of comfort maybe, but the freelance cultural sector in this city has had you, and they're probably, when I say better off, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The fact they've got the City of Culture who kept supporting them certainly in the early times of lockdown probably puts them in a slightly better position than if they were in, I don't know, Hull or Glasgow or Wolverhampton.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, there are opportunities, and there are opportunities that are happening in the city that potentially makes the impact a little duller than it will be elsewhere. I guess what we did is ultimately we had to pivot and change what we were doing almost immediately, recognising that actually there isn't a City of Culture which will see a sustained legacy unless there is a vibrant, sustained freelance sector in the city, unless the buildings felt they had the opportunity to continue to innovate. So in response as lockdown, we, you know, things like we created an emergency grant fund faster than anybody else could do because we weren't caught up in government bureaucracy. So we're able to create a small fund through the Heart of England to invest in freelancers who frankly couldn't pay rent that month because all their work had gone. So tiny micro grants that were established, but we also moved quickly to develop some commissioning where we basically paid arts organisations to create some content for broadcast and production online. We also were able to make some of our commitments to the local arts sector faster. We just decided that actually we need to make some decisions about what would be in the programme for 2021 swifter, so people had some certainty so they could plan about what they were doing. And I guess things like we also committed to delivering training for the cultural sector to ensure that our production forums continue, so the technical guys in the city can continue to network and be together. But also working with PetXI, we sponsor some kind of online mental health training for the cultural sector. There's things like that, small initiatives which were enabled to kind of keep people together and to thinking about a future. So yes, City of Culture provides some beacon of hope, but we can't do all the heavy lifting ourselves, and we still look to government, to Arts Council to play a bit, and they are broadly, and organisations like Belgrade are really well lined up to get some emergency funding, but it's not going to sustain them for very long.
And you've obviously had excuse me, big backing from commercial supporters in the lead up to the bid, and that was one key reason or one factor in our success. Yeah. How much have they managed to stick with you in, I know you mentioned PetXI, who was sponsored before and sponsors now, but how difficult has it been for them, and how have they stuck with you? How have you found it?
And it's astonishing. It's amazing, really, to see kind of the level of continued support that most businesses are able to continue to back the City of Culture. I guess they're recognising that they want to be part of the reset recovery of their city. In fact, over the recent months, we've seen some of our kind of long-standing business supporters, increase their support for City of Culture, which is absolutely magnificent. And also, very recently, we've seen a few organisations join the fold. The kind of last week, Protel stepped forward as a new 2021 business member. We announcement with Rico last week as well. So we're seeing levels of positivity, but we're under no illusion that the conditions are really challenging. And I guess what we now want to do is make sure that when we are raising this funds, we're making sure we're investing back into local economy so that actually those businesses see this kind of recycle through. But it's remarkable how committed businesses remain to the City of Culture.
When did it sort of become obvious to you that it was going to have to be put back the year? And can you explain the mechanic of that? Do you have to ask the City Council and then national politicians? Do they tell you? How does it work?
City Culture is delivered by a mass partnership. City Council, the independent trust that I work for, Combined Authority, Arts Council, and indeed DCMS. And DCMS, Department of Culture, Media, Sport, are the sponsors for the title. But there's no single entity that can make a decision. It's intended that it's a collaborative decision. So it was clear that we needed to shift our dates, and we worked through 9 different scenarios in order to decide which of the scenarios would protect as many of the promises that we made. And so brilliantly collaborative process with all of our partners, the City Council, side by side with the Trust, and then bringing in DCMS into the discussion, and ultimately had to seek the endorsement of the Secretary of State to the shift. And thankfully that came in a fairly timely fashion, allowing us to give certainty to all our partners about what City of Culture will be.
It's a small detail, but it wasn't quite timely enough because it was due to be on the lunchtime and you were due to appear on our Champions that evening. So what were you messing about at? And I suppose, we've talked about the importance of culture in general, but I suppose, to be fair, whichever party is in power, at the top level, they're worrying about people dying in hospitals and testing. And so was it difficult to get them to concentrate on it or not?
Ultimately, there was a government department whose responsibility is culture, media, and sport, and actually, I guess there was a hierarchy really of needs. And the intention was to kind of work through what was happening with, make the news cycles broadcast. Then there was a piece about actually what's happening with the, public spaces, and then there was a piece around kind of sporting, and then they came to kind of deal with City of Culture. But actually, it took us a while to build up what our scenario was, so we could make our best possible case. But I think the government and all our partners, turned their attention to it as quick as they could, and actually this process, grim though it is, has given us and indeed the wider cultural sector an opportunity to really state the value of investing in cultural services, in terms of how we bring communities together, how we participate in kind of skills development, how do we engender some civic pride. all of this has been made, our case has been made stronger during this period. The resilience of our organisations, to innovate and continually change what they do. It's fragile because of this over reliance on earned income, but my goodness me, you're seeing some innovation in the sector, which other sectors absolutely should learn from.
And you've had to keep, on one hand, your sorry, mixing metaphors there, your foot to the floor, because you've announced, new initiatives on apprenticeships, partnerships, merchandise. There is opportunities out there for either people to work directly or for businesses to capitalise.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we're absolutely committed to delivering City of Culture from May 2021 for 12 months, and so therefore all of the work that needs to be done to deliver this huge project still needs to happen. And in fact, as we think about how we create a legacy from City of Culture, it's going to be less about tangible assets. There's going to be lots of new public realm and some new cultural facilities. But for me, the legacy will always come from how do we invest in kind of skills and talent of the people of Coventry and Warwickshire. So we were absolutely determined that even through this period, we would continue to invest in our leadership programme, our apprenticeship programme, our volunteering programme. All of those things are really vital in terms of managing a legacy beyond May 2022. So so we remain focused on delivery right now. We've got certainty about dates. We still have to kind of feverishly fundraise. We still have to make sure that our cultural sector is as strong as it can be during this period. But we have to continue to plan to give everybody else that certainty they need.
And obviously the Champions sits under the auspices of the LEP, and they, through City Council and a wider West Midlands level, have funded bricks and mortar that's still, I'm looking over the Daimler Powerhouse, the Wigley Group are doing. I can see the Telegraph Hotel that's getting towards completion that CVP have developed. So those developers have had to keep faith and keep developing as well. But we're beginning to see that starting to come now to fruition, aren't we?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, the capital programme that has been done by and large kind of alongside the Trust. I mean, the Trust haven't been leading these projects. And I guess that's a kind of indication of a strong partnership is, other entities have taken the lead in these amazing initiatives, and multiple funders have stepped forward, recognising, the commercial opportunities that will come from millions of additional potential visitors to the city in 2021, but also how do we kind of show off the city to its best so that people come back in 22 and 23. So it's brilliant that this capital works on. There was a brief pause in the early part of lockdown, but people kind of got back to work fairly quickly, and certainly by May 2021, the cultural infrastructure, public realm will be transformed.
And I suppose on the one hand, while there's all that uncertainty, if you drive down into Coventry past the railway station, people can actually see that things are still happening, and psychologically that's important because it makes them realise that you're still on track.
That's it. I mean, there's sort of part of our task is to give people confidence in Coventry as visitors, as investors, a place to live, a place to come and study. And so we have to tell a story of the city that is endeavouring to meet this challenge. And City of Culture will be probably the singular positive arts and cultural story of 2021. And so the spotlight is on our city next year. And so hopefully that gives other people confidence and faith that they wish to be kind of aligned to everything else that the city has to offer as well. So yeah, kind of confidence in Coventry is a key story that we need to be telling during this period.
And obviously, just lastly, in this period, you've unveiled your new branding. People are seeing it everywhere, billboards, TV, advertising. That seems to have been very well received in general. Yeah,
I mean, I'm immensely proud of what the team have pulled together. I mean, it's a brand that celebrates the kind of the weaving industry, the blue, but it also positions a story. Well done, Adam. It positions a city as a city that's on the move, a city that is constantly evolving, has evolved through history, has survived terrible, tumultuous times, and will do again. And so, I'm really pleased with how it's landed, and how so many other partners are adding to helping us tell the story of Coventry, the city that moves.
And the most asked question I suppose, is can you tell us the programme for next year? And I know the answer to that already, but Mike Ballinger in the chat room has said, when will there be announcements on the programme?
So we've got, I guess mapping out kind of some timeline stuff that's about to happen. So we've, in the last couple of weeks, announced our apprenticeships. Very soon we'll be starting the recruitment for our volunteering programme in October. towards the end of October, we will be announcing at least 10 major events to kind of whet some appetite. Then as we move into November, we have some test events happening in public realm. And we're working in partnership with the bids to enhance, I guess, the Christmas offer to really help retailers get a boost. And then as we move into January was when we will be announcing our full programme. So, so for now, I guess what people should do is, if they can, sign up to our mailing list, absolutely follow us on social media, but there will be a flurry of announcements in January 2021, giving people hopefully enough time to think about planning for their spending their summer holiday in Coventry and Warwickshire. Don't be tempted to go abroad next summer. It's going to be amazing. And then bring your friends and family for winter and spring 2022.
And Michael asked the question, I take it you'd willingly accept an application for him to be a volunteer, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're looking for 5,000 people to provide the best possible welcome to the city from visitors from all across the UK and hopefully internationally. And we absolutely want our volunteering brigade to be representative of every age group, ethnicity across the city. Volunteers will be able to work on a handful of events or hundreds of events. So we're being super flexible. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be announcing the 2 local organisations who have won the contract to deliver this programme for us. So it's, yeah, the volunteering programme is going to be extraordinary. It's a bit like the games makers from the Olympic Games, but with a kind of real kind of Coventry flavour.
We, you obviously know, and I think probably most of the champions know Fleur Sexton from PetXI. In the chat room, she said, we'll be volunteering. And then straight away, one of her employees said, and we'll happily train all the volunteers for you. So
there we go. Always looking for commercial opportunity. Yeah. Yes,
absolutely. Martin, thanks very much for joining us. Real optimism ahead of it. And again, I think from everybody, you know, applauding the work that the team are doing. And certainly, I think you've talked about the support you've given to that freelance community that is vital and hopefully will stand us in good stead. There might be a few questions coming in the chat room, so if you could stay on and answer them, that would be great. So if anybody's got any to fire away to Martin, then please do. Thank you again, Martin.
Thank you. Cheers.
Right, we're going to move on to our last speaker tonight, Phil Popham. Phil has spent, with one slight watery diversion, a career in automotive with the likes of Jaguar, Land Rover and VW. But 2 years ago, he was appointed as the CEO of legendary sports car company Lotus. The company, like many in that sector, has had a roller coaster existence, but it's now under the ownership of Geely, who also own LEVC, the makers of the London taxi. And a couple of months ago, he announced a major new investment into Warwickshire, and we're really glad that he can join us tonight. We will just hopefully bring him out of his anonymity behind that black screen. Phil, can you at least hear me? I think you need to unmute yourself, Phil, if you can. Hi, Phil, are you there?
Hi. There we go. Sorry, I thought it was going to be all automated. Good evening.
Don't worry about it.
Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. What really was the pull of Lotus for you? You know, you've had jobs throughout those car companies that I joined, that I mentioned rather, that are perhaps more mainstream. What was the pull of Lotus for you in particular?
Well, as you mentioned there in the intro, I'd spent really pretty well my whole career, except for a 4-year sabbatical in the luxury boat market with Sunseeker. I'd spent the whole career in automotive, Land Rover and then Jaguar Land Rover. Went into luxury yachts, but another British luxury brand. So that's been the story of my career. And didn't think I'd come back into automotive, but there is always a pull. But it would have to be for the right opportunity when you spent so much time with a couple of famous brands, British brands in that segment. And Lotus was that one. It was I joined on its 70th birthday, proud heritage in Formula One, some iconic cars over the years. But the most important thing was it was a real opportunity to rejuvenate a famous brand because of the ownership structure. So 3 years ago, Geely, the fastest growing automotive company in the world, took a majority stake and were committed to a very ambitious investment. They flew me out to China. I actually met with Li Shufu, the chairman, and I could see his passion, but most importantly, his commitment to invest in this brand and to have that opportunity to lead the team and bring in a new team to deliver that was an opportunity I simply could not turn down.
And really, Geely seemed to come into Lotus at a time where if they hadn't have come in, things might have been very different, because it had a rocky time before then, hadn't it?
Yeah, a very checkered history in terms of ownership, in terms of investment, in terms of the term false dawns, heard quite often. But my first 3 months in the role a couple of years ago was to develop our plan. And our plan, which we've termed Vision 80, was what we wanted to be in 10 years' time. So a 70-year-old company. And really that plan has been built around as being a 70-year-old startup. What do I mean by that? A famous history, a level of awareness all around the world, some great activities and engineering and sports car elements over the last 70 years. But this is something different, an ambitious plan to actually invest massively in new products, to take us into new segments, to re-establish our third-party Lotus engineering function, and to be a significant player globally. And we couldn't do that without the right sort of ownership, not just in terms of money, but in terms of access to expertise and resource that is in the Geely family.
And I mean, many people have a Lotus in mind that probably dates them, whether it's the original Elan, whether it's through to James Bond's sort of amphibious esprit. Just quickly, without every spec of every model, just run us through the range and what you're, the sort of sector financially you're sort of aiming at.
Yeah, well, it's fairly simple, really, because we have 3 products at the moment. We're less than 2,000 units. Our small cars are the Elise, and it goes to a very track-oriented Exige. And the Evora is the largest of our cars. But that's what we've got today. But as you say, a lot of awareness around Lotus, but people will remember the iconic cars of Elan or Esprit or Formula One or Colin Chapman, who founded the business. And the familiarity of what we are today, those 3 products, is fairly small. And we do appeal, I would say, to a small prospect base, very enthusiast base, and our investment now is to actually appeal to a much wider group in the future. The first statement of intent, if you will, is in terms of our expertise in engineering, but our investment intent is the Avaya hypercar. So it'll be the first British all-electric hypercar, which will go into production next year. It will be the most powerful production car in the world, and it will also talk about the electric future of the brand, but also the industry. And we will be showing another sports car next year as well, which will appeal to a much wider group of people, which will address, I guess, some of the enthusiast limitations of the car in terms of connectivity, in terms of usability, in terms of ergonomics, a sports car that you can work with and live with every day. That will be our first step into, as I say, a very ambitious growth plan for the next few years.
I'm not a car expert, but I'm presuming that Geely's expertise in electric powertrains that was developed partly up at LEVC, without that, you wouldn't be able to take that step forward to the hypercar, presumably.
Well, they have incredible levels of resource because their growth, significant in China, yes, but also in Sweden. They're owners of Volvo, tech centres in Germany, investing here in the UK. We are a centre of excellence as well. Our expertise has always been about lightweighting, aerodynamics, chassis dynamics, and we are doing packages of work for Geely Group companies, and equally, they are doing engineering for us. And their expertise, their technology, their pioneering breakthroughs in a lot of areas, we can get access to it. I've described it quite often as a child walking into a sweetie shop. We can look at what's on the shelf. We can choose what we like from the shelf. We have to pay for it if we use it, but the access that we've got to technology and resource and expertise is fantastic. You couple that with a parent that wants to invest levels of money, and bear in mind we're spending on product development multiples of our revenue this year. We couldn't do that without the backing, the very sound backing and financial backing of that owner as well.
So to come forward to the Wellesbourne announcement, can you first of all explain what it is? Because you're not making cars there, it's an engineering consultancy. Just explain, first of all, what will be happening there.
Yeah, so it's an advanced technology centre. So it will complement the 400 to 500 engineers that we have in Norfolk at our headquarters in Hethel. 130 engineers to start. We'll be moving into the site on the University of Warwick campus. That has capacity for 3 times that, and that's our intention to build up over time. It will also house our Lotus Engineering, our third-party engineering consultancy business, That will be its headquarters there. And it's quite significant in terms of its location for a couple of reasons. Being on the university campus and next to WMG, who are great in actually bridging the research and to links to manufacturers, as well as a university base, as well as expertise in that area. That is a great partner to be sat next to. We're also, of course, able to tap into a phenomenal resource in the Midlands, and especially in Coventry and Warwickshire, for automotive. So a new talent pool that we can actually tap into as well here in the Midlands.
Will Norfolk always be the home of Lotus? Because I mean, obviously, Chapman was from. You know, if Mr. Geely gave you a clean slate, you probably wouldn't say, right, I'll produce cars in Norwich.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, it is the ancestral home, they call it. It is a destination. People will come and pick up their cars. They'll come and visit the site. We're building a museum there. We're building a customer centre. Building a new factory for the sports car. But you're right. You wouldn't, if had a blank piece of paper, Norfolk is probably not the place to build it. Although I have fantastic views in every direction from my office over there. It is a beautiful county. But we have aspirations to be a global business, and you know, we will be doing engineering packages of work around the world. A lot of it will be based in Norfolk, but a significant base now here in the Midlands.
And you know, you look at automotive firms sort of across the world, and quite often there is a Coventry and Warwickshire thread there, isn't there? And it's obviously true of you and some of your team. Does that still hold as true as it ever has done?
Yes, I mean the home. Look back in history of all the British automotive for 100 plus years, and there's always been a massive centre in the Midlands. Universities have actually set up their courses and their facilities and their programs around automotive. I actually went to Aston University myself, and the reason I went into automotive was really guided a lot by what I did in my course at university, where a lot of the case studies were around automotive, because it is so inherent in the history of the area. And so it's wholly appropriate, I think, for a British automotive manufacturer to tap into that resource, that expertise, that passion for the industry that's here in the Midlands.
Well, look, when you're established and when hopefully normal term times return, we'd love to come and hold a champions meeting at the unit if we could, if there's room for us, and for you to show us firsthand what you're doing, if that will be okay. Absolutely,
I'd love to do that.
I'm going to say thank you to Phil. Phil, really kind of you to join us. And just as you go, we're going to play a video. Now, we've had 3 run-throughs of this, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And there is no Wi-Fi on in this office apart from the one that is going to guide the video. So if something goes wrong, it is the infrastructure, not us. But Phil, thank you very much, and we'll play the video.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Just bear with us for a second while we line it up. There we go. Thank you very much to Phil, and thank you to all our speakers for agreeing to contribute, and especially for their candour at what is a difficult time for all businesses and organisations. We've told you in previous meetings about the website and portal Find It in CW and the opportunities that lie there for all businesses. There are currently 155 opportunities on there, worth a combined £615 million. So please do access it, have a good look. It could be very much worth it for you. On Monday, it is the annual UN-backed International Day of Peace. Because of Coventry is the UK's only city of peace and reconciliation, it's a very important date in our calendar. The team at Rising, the Global Peace Forum that takes place every year, it's happening in November this year, that is a partnership between Coventry University, the City Council and the Cathedral, has been conducting its second annual survey of local businesses and organisations about really what it means to all of us to be based in the UK's only city of peace and reconciliation. The survey has just 3 questions and it takes less than a minute to complete. The deadline for completing the survey is midday this Friday. Thanks to everybody who does take part, and we will put the link on the Champions Twitter feed immediately after this meeting. So if you could do that, it really helps them plan for future years. Our next meeting is going to be on October the 14th. It is going to be a virtual meeting, but we're going to be significantly tweaking is probably an understatement, the format. We'll be going to be coming live from the headquarters of the internationally renowned furniture maker Vitsu in Leamington, when our guest will include the firm's MD, Mark Adams. It really is a remarkable firm and a remarkable business that chose our area to relocate out of London to. The format will be new. Registration, I can reassure everybody, will be a simple one-step process through Eventbrite, which is a system that we used to use when we actually met for real. So thanks again to everybody for joining today. Please, if you're new to the group, do look at Nick Erskine. His details are on the website, and please, we'd love to see you again in October. And for everybody else, please, today or tomorrow, tell somebody something positive about Coventry Warwickshire. Thank you very much, everybody.